Hello, my name is Blade, and I know that if there is something that everyone loves, it's food. And the best type of food is this food that you make for yourself. So today, I'll be showing you how to make fried pies. The first step is to get a packet of yeast and a cup of warm water. And you pour the cup of warm water into the yeast. And then, you grab a teaspoon of sugar, pour it into the yeast water, then you stir this until you see all of the yeast kind of dissolve. Sometimes not all of it will actually dissolve, but it'll dissolve more once you let it sit for a while, and you're supposed to let it sit until it kind of gets kind of creamy. Not like this kind of milky white texture right now, but it'll actually get like an actual more solid white. Okay, something I forgot to mention before was that the yeast I'm using, when I said a packet, I mean one of these. It's a 1/4 of an ounce packet of fast-rising instant yeast. And here is the water now that it's done. As you can see, it kind of foamed up quite a bit. It has lots of creamy white on it, which means that it is ready to be used for the dough. But before I can add that, I need to put in the flour and the other ingredients. So you need about 2.5 cups of flour for the actual flour you're using for your dough for this. You're going to periodically need to add more for different textures and stuff like that. But at first, you're just going to add 2.5 cups of flour. You're going to add 2 teaspoons of just table salt. If it'll get out of there, that is. Seems to be defying me. But I like them nice and salty, my fried pies, and so I like to put in 3. But the original recipe I took it from uses 2. And then you're going to take 2 tablespoons of olive oil. This is very important because it helps to bind your dough together. And then, after all that, you take the yeast water and try to pour it evenly over the bowl. Now I realize I forgot to grab one of the more important parts of this, which is a spatula of any sort. It can be either a wooden spoon or a rubber spatula is preferred. But you're going to stir the flour and yeast water and all that mixture until all of the water is gone and all that's left is a sticky dough. I like to make sure that all the sides are thoroughly scraped to make sure that none of it's kind of getting out of there. But as you can see, now it's starting to form up nicely. And the way I kind of learned how to do stuff like this is I actually used to work at a Pizza Hut. And when I worked at that Pizza Hut, I learned how to make like calzones and stuff. We didn't actually make our dough or anything. And sometimes you're going to have to like clean off the spoon of all the dough. At this point, I think the texture is kind of good enough where I can start using my hands to kind of knead this. But I used to work at a Pizza Hut, and they taught me how to make calzones and stuff like that. They didn't teach us how to make the dough. But most online recipes, that are fairly simple, for pizza dough and stuff, will work for calzones or fried pies, or whatever. So I just grabbed the pizza dough recipe online a few months back, started making it, and people seem to like it well enough. Can you agree with that, Roman?
I can agree.
So, that's the recipe that I'm using right now is actually from a site called All Recipes for just a pizza dough. So if you want to make pizza or something, this works just fine for that as well. It's actually a very similar process to what I'm doing now. Anyway, but once you have the dough into it's supposed to not be super sticky, but also not be like super hard or anything, or like falling apart. Some pieces might fall apart, but you just kind of have to put them back on there and mix them back in with your hands. Anyway, but once you get that, you're going to take the dough and you're going to put it onto a lightly powdered surface. And you're going to kind of knead the dough and spread it until it is absolutely not sticky anymore. You got to make sure that that dough is not sticky at all, or else it'll stick to either the table or each other or something, and it'll kind of make it hard for you to properly form it into whatever shapes you want. Stop, please. One very important thing about the dough is the thickness and width. The width can be pretty much whatever you want based on how much you want to eat at that point, but the thickness has to be fairly specific so that it's not just a massive piece of fried dough and it's not falling apart and have holes in it where everything like the cheese is seeping out into the hot oil. Because these are in fact fried pies. So, I like to make sure that my thickness is about so. It's less than a centimeter here, I think. I've never actually measured it. But it shouldn't be like falling apart like I just did there. But it also should be thick enough, thin enough where it's, as I said, not just going to be a massive wall of dough. But once you have it about like this, nice and thin and kind of floppy, you can take it and you can start putting toppings on it, which is the most delicious part, of course. So I like to take a little bit of cheese. I personally like mozzarella. And you can use either pre-grated stuff or you can grate it yourself from a block. I like to take some onions on there too much. You have to be very careful to not put too much onion on there or else it will completely overpower the flavor of anything else is on there. And now I'm starting to tear up a little bit because these are extremely freshly cut. Then you take pepperoni and you layer it one next to the other on the entirety of the surface of it, but being careful not to get too close to the edge, and that applies to the cheese and the onions and all that too, because you want to actually be able to, close it so that you can fry it. But once you have all of your toppings on there, you're going to gently fold this side over onto the other half to make it kind of this crescent shape here. Not crescent, but a half circle. And you're going to lightly press down on that to make sure there's no air bubbles. But not too hard, or else you'll start pushing stuff through the other side of the dough. Then, you're going to take, and then there's a little piece sticking out that I got tucked back in all neat there. Then you're going to take the corner of it and curl it up onto itself. And that'll make sure that it's nice and sealed, where none of those tasty ingredients are going to spill out into the hot oil and be completely ruined forever. So, once you get the edge flipped over, you kind of smooth it into the side with either your finger or fork until it's mostly seamless. You're never going to be able to get it quite seamless, but one thing that'll help and make it look very nice is if you take the fork, or whatever you're using to press into, and make slight indentations on the fried pie, and now it's getting stuck on there. But it'll look very nice and makes it a bit more appetizing. I always like to do this. It makes it look all fancy. And then, if you have any sort of specific, like if you have different ones that you're making for different people, you can use the fork to kind of score over and make any sort of marking you want on there. Anyway, so at this point, this is ready to go in the oil, which is not quite preheated yet. So, that will be it for this segment. Stop. Did you just start it?
Yes.
Good job, Roman. Good job. I'll just crop that part. Okay, so now that I have these two now fried pies, I made the other one while it was not actually rolling the camera. I'm going to put this into the nice preheated oil, which I have at 425 degrees Fahrenheit, so that it gets a nice golden color when it fries. It doesn't matter if they kind of stack on top of each other, because you can always separate them while they're in the fryer. But for a while, they're going to sit in there, and they're going to, of course, fry, as that is a fryer. And I will get back to you when they are a little bit more done. Stop. Okay, so once they're frying, it's important to wait and actually be attending them. And then, with a pair of tongs, every once in a while, to kind of flip them over and see what color it is. So right now, it's a nice golden color, which is the perfect coloration, and thus it's perfectly cooked on the inside. And you'll also notice, if you kind of tap it with something, that it's firm, but not, like, actually hardened. So I'm going to flip both of these, and they're going to cook on the other side as well now. And soon, these will be ready to enjoy. Okay, so once the fried pies are nice and golden colored on either side, I'm going to zoom in there.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So once they're about cooked like this, you can start putting them on the plate because they're done. And then you can put your other batch in. And I only have this one from the other batch, so I'm just going to put the one in and I'll make the other one in a moment. Because I have just enough dough for one more left there. You don't... Okay. But you can like, kind of have them running simultaneously, so you can make enough for one person or for two people or however many are going to have the fried pies in one batch, and then you can have yours in the second batch. That's what I typically do, because I can't exactly eat it and cook it at the same time. So here are the beautiful fried pies. They are really good when served with any sort of marinara sauce or anything like that. And the first time I actually made these, now that I think about it, I was talking about it earlier, I was talking about the Pizza Hut and stuff, but I mentioned that they actually taught me how to make calzones. These, as you can see, are not exactly calzones, because calzones aren't exactly fried. So, it's kind of a, not like a funny story exactly, but it's kind of an interesting story, I think, of how I first made them, kind of. My dad and I were sitting around, we were kind of bored. Haha, yes, Kitty, she is very fluffy. But my dad and I were sitting around, we had just finished watching a movie, and we were starving. And we were like, oh, what are we going to have? We had calzones yesterday, and so we can't have calzones again, because I kind of wanted something like kind of with some cheese and meat and stuff. And so we decided, how about fried pies? And so I just literally made calzones and shoved them in a fryer. Turned out perfect. I have no idea how that happened, but it did. And so now, that's the same recipe I am still using, and I'm very happy with it. So, that's just a little story about how I first learned how to make the fried pies. I've always really enjoyed them, and everyone else, I think I mentioned already, seems to enjoy them, or they are being quiet about it and aren't telling me, and just being polite. So, in any case, I'm going to give a thank you to them now. And a big thank you to Roman as well, if you turn the camera to yourself real quick, because he is the person who is helping me with all the filming and all that, which is very, very kind of him. He had no obligation to do so. And that's about all I have. And if you are still watching this after me actually teaching you how to make these, I have no idea why, because you should be making them for yourself. Come on.